Hi, my name's Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies. Customer brought this bow in today, and it's an old Hoyt, so I want to talk a bit about it. I'm going to say a bit about the customer. Okay, so rough time frame on this bow, around 1985, I think this bow was produced. How do I know that? Because we were a Hoyt dealer in that year, right? And you'll notice from my videos that we're no longer Hoyt dealers. So Hoyt was in Australia. Hoyt left Australia, and when they left Australia, they gave out Hoyt dealerships to dealers. My dad didn't want one because they gave it to everyone, and Dad's like, well, that's pointless. So that's why we're not Hoyt dealers, okay? But back when we used to sell these bows, we were Hoyt dealers, okay? We were given Hoyt uniforms and all that sort of stuff, and I guess we sold a few Hoyts. Right, so let's just discuss this bow. Going back in time, what bows used to look like. This is 44 inches axle to axle. So back in 1980s, a lot of archery was finger shooting. So you used to shoot with 3 fingers, and a lot of it was bare bow, okay? So without sights, it was very, very common. So I'm going to say this is because we went from recurve archery, compounds were new, and back then, you know, basic hunting sights were the thing, like few pins, and a lot of people shot bare bow. It was seen to be cheating to shoot with sights, right? It was like, well, you're just a cheater if you shoot with sights. Bare bow was what people shot. So I want to discuss this bow a little bit. This is the era when strings came in. So back with the first compound bows, they were steel cables, okay? Then I'm going to say Hoyt. I think Hoyt brought this out. They went to strings, and the string material they used was fast fly, which stretches. So it was very hard to keep these wheels in tune. And you'd pull them back and you'd twist up the cables to tune the wheels. That's the way life was. You had 2 wheels on your cam. One wheel here, the bushing, and one wheel there. One wheel was 65% let off and one wheel was 50% let off. Okay? Most people shot at 65% let off back in the day. The riser itself, I'm going to just discuss a little bit, was very much like the recurve risers of the time. So you had a brace height on this bow of 9 inches, like a recurve. It's like a recurve for a reason, because people shot recurves and they were switching over to compounds. Now, when Hoyt made this bow, they had various limb options available. This was a basic limb, right? So basic straight fiberglass limb. Sometimes they were fiberglass with wood inside. Then some of the more expensive limbs were a recurve limb, okay? The paint job on this is very, I'm going to say very unique. It's like a thick paint, and then they obviously spray on top of it, so I'll try and show that. Now, so this bow is 40 years old. You can see some signs of wear here, but it's pretty good. The grips were very much like that off the recurve target bows. So if you shot a recurve target bow, your TD4s, compound grip was the same. It was basically interchangeable. Right, bow quivers. So the bow quivers are 2-piece there and there. They bolted onto the limb pockets here. Very interesting. Now what you're going to notice about this cam here, so the back of this here is rounded. So you can see it's round here. This is where this cable tracks. So when you pull this back, it's going to be a bit spongy. So later versions of the cams, this would be straight, so you've got a wall. Now what you also notice on this bow, there is no adjustment on draw length. Now this here detaches. There's 3 screws. 1, 2, 3, detaches so you can change the draw length. So it's a module which would shove in. Now in this module, on this bow, to change it, the strings are actually connected, so you need a bow press, 3 screws to detach that module. It was a bit of a pain back in the 1980s, right? The strings were a bit of a pain. We had peep rotation. It's a bit of a pain, but people were shooting barebow predominantly, so peep rotation wasn't that much of an issue. Now I want to just take you through a bit of this stuff. This is like nylon. When I say nylon, like fishing monofilament. It's like plastic, what you use on fishing lines. And yesterday they used the normal string material, but back then there was the monofilament here. That was common, and when it used to break, it used to just spring open. He had one knocking point. The overdraw, look how big it is, and it was bolted on, and a lot of these were custom made to fit into the actual bow itself. The drop away RRS, this definitely would have been shot with fingers, was this way down, and each one of these jaws is independent. That's unique. I haven't seen this before. Most times they come down together. What else did I want to mention? This cable guard design, bolts underneath. This was fairly standard on the Hoyts. Now he's got it on this side. Normally they were on this side. I don't know if that's just because they stuffed up. Some things I want to mention on this bow, they used to put these things here to stop the limbs cracking. Okay. Now the problem we had on compounds, or on these compounds, is the strings ran really close to the limb, just down here. See here, this string? It ran so close it touched. And you can see the serving wears on the limb here, because they used to touch. So that would become a problem. Like this one, it's worn on that particular spot, just there where it touches. That was common. So from here, we then got bows with cams. They became shorter and more aggressive and faster. But this was pretty much the start of it. Your Hoyt ProVantage. Now, back in the day, I shot a bow like this, the model up, with the recurved wood limbs. Okay, it was the sort of top of the line back then. Anyway, so the other thing I want to notice on this bow, because we rebuilt this bow today for the customer, I noticed the limbs were split. Just there. So these limbs have cracked. Fairly common with old bows, that limbs will split. Now when I saw this bow in bits, I didn't notice the limb was cracked. Because it was all wrapped up in paper, and I said it'll be about half an hour to rebuild it. He's got 3 bows to rebuild, and I said about half an hour each bow. But this is fairly common because this is fiberglass, and fiberglass wears, basically pulls apart. So, but most times it'll be okay. Oh, the other thing I want to mention is this here. See these? See how it's got a gap? So what this was for, you used to have like a string, you'd hook it in there, you'd pull back the bow, hook the string in here, the string would come down here, and it was like a bow press. And so that was a thing back in the old days. 2-piece bow quiver was a thing. Now they got rid of that, but anyway, just thought I'd show that. What's a bow like this worth today? Well, it's always a matter of how much you pay for it. Now, I would say that some people will pay a lot. I would say if you want to shoot barebow with fingers, a bow like this is rare. And, probably $100 odd. However, if you want to shoot barebow and with fingers, bows like this are hard to find, so you can pay more. But this is probably a pretty decent bow for that type of archery. So, if you didn't have the cracked limb, it'd be great. Anyway. I'll leave you with that one. Quite a good bow at the time. Forgiving to shoot because of the big brace height. So aim very easily. You can see the limbs are back past the anchor point. So there's your pivot point, and the limbs are back here. So easy to shoot. Doesn't wobble around. They cut the brace height and they move the limbs forward, making the bow unstable. So the bow shakes when you aim. Anyway. I was to show this. I thought this was interesting, and it was interesting for me because it's an old bow that we used to sell. And the other 2 bows the customer had were bows that either myself or my dad would have sold the customer. I don't know who the customer is because they wouldn't tell me. Back when I was, in my teenage years. Now, I know it's mine, when I say it's mine, I know my work. So I can see it's a string I made. I can see that the kisser button was tied on the way I tie on kisser buttons. It was, yeah. Anyway, I'll leave you with that one, and I'll do a review on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.